The word is value. It's got a lot of different connotations. Some see it as cheap. Others look at it as a deal. But at the end of the day, in the ATV category, the buck stops with dependability. So how much dependability will you get for a cheap ATV? This is a CFMOTO C-Force 400, and it's a cheap ATV. In Canada, it tips the scales at $49.95, and south of the border, it's $500 cheaper. It looks pretty good. It's got a lot of nice features, but how does it all play out when you put it to the test? Before I give you the dirt on how this thing handles and rides, let's take a look at what powers the C-Force. Because while it's a cheap ATV, it still needs to be able to pull its weight. The engine is a 398cc in a single overhead cam design with EFI. The fuel injection system is a Bosch design, so you know this motor isn't a cheap offshore throw together. It's built well with good componentry. The power output is a very impressive 31 horsepower and 21 pound-feet of torque. Now keep in mind, the Polaris 450 HO with larger displacement is rated at the same 31 horsepower, so CFMOTO has got something figured out well in the engine package. While numbers really don't mean a thing if you can't get all that power to the ground, CFMOTO has teamed up with CVTech, a Quebec manufacturer of clutches and clutch components, to put together a nice little transmission that features CVTech drive and driven clutches. With a top speed of over 55 miles an hour, this little 400 sure gets you where you're going. Low speed acceleration is very acceptable, and mid-range seems nice and crisp, even when ridden by a full-size adult. Engagement is a little on the high side at nearly 2,500 RPM, but if that's the way they're getting this kind of power delivery, it's not an issue, as we found no sign of jumpiness or abrupt throttle input at any throttle position. Adding to the engine package on this little 400 are the aesthetics. I mean, this thing is a really good-looking ATV to have parked in your garage. And honestly, the fit and finish is every bit the part of a North American or Japanese-made ATV. The bodywork is nice, designed with integrated racks, and one of my favorite design points, the front tube bumper that seamlessly comes from behind the fenders. Turn signals are integrated into the headlight and taillights, mirrors are standard, heck, it's even got a horn. While most riders found the right-hand brake lever to be a little bit backwards, it's just an adjustment, and they do stop quite powerfully. Out back is a 2-inch hitch receiver, 4x4 and diff lock are easily accessible and use a familiar toggle switch that's simple and easy to use. The digital gauge gives us everything we need to know, and it's in a very visible location that's not too hard to glance at when riding. So it's all good, right? Well, not exactly. While I'm not here to sugarcoat things, I have pointed out the good, but I also need to tell you the areas that we think the CFMOTO engineers need to take another look at. There's two areas we are concerned with when riding the C-Force 400. The first and most obvious being the front suspension. While straight-on bumps are handled acceptably, off-camber ruts or bumps cause a very unnerving front-end pull. This is noticeable pretty early on when riding, and when linked with the quite heavy steering, it can become tough for smaller riders with less upper body strength to drive it all day. We feel there is a camber or suspension geometry adjustment that needs to be made at the factory to clear this up. But with that change, could truly make this C-Force a true podium competitor for the 400 class. And it's not that it doesn't have a chance against the competition. I mean, this thing is $2,500 cheaper than the Polaris 450, so there's money in the bank. It's just you're gonna have to take it for a test drive to determine whether you can live with the front-end characteristics the way that they are. If the C-Force 400 was softer in suspension compliance, had a little more seat foam, and an update on the front-end suspension and steering, I'd be hard-pressed not to put this right at the top of its class. But until those areas are remedied, it's a hard decision between tried-and-true North American and Japanese brands or the newer-to-market and cheaper CFMOTO. Will it be reliable? Time's only going to tell. But you can be sure that CFMOTO is listening to the market with open ears and improving their product yearly, while also expanding their dealerships across North America. Like the video you just saw? Do you want to see more? Click the subscribe link and add the Trax channel, and you're going to see a whole lot more great content.